reside in San Antone. I came up here to hopefully pass a bill, Senate Bill 876, which enables homeless people to obtain an ID and have the fees actually waived.
Can you tell us about your life? How you came to advocate for these issues?
Well, I've always enjoyed helping others, and what better way to help others than through Sam's ministry. They've helped me out tremendously by actually helping me get my ID. So that's what I came up here to do, is advocate for them and for their help.
Okay.
Do you want to tell them a little bit about your testimony, how your experience of not having an ID?
Well, when I first moved to San Antone, I had a valid California ID and a valid driver's license. But actually, I was turned down for two really good jobs in San Antone just because I didn't have a Texas state ID. So Sam's helped me get my birth certificate, which enabled me to actually get an ID. At the time, I only needed 2 forms of ID to obtain my ID, but now it's 3 forms of ID to obtain your ID. So, yeah.
So one of the things that we're particularly concerned about is the cuts to the state budget, cuts to services like public education, Medicaid, all kinds of services. I think millions of people, I think just about every Texas family is touched by budget cuts, and SAM is one of the institutions that is that could potentially have to adjust the way they provide services because of the budget.
Yes, from what I understand, they just received budget cuts themselves tremendously. So,
can you tell us about some of the services SAM has provided to you other than the ID, and what those services mean to you?
well, other than the ID, through their facility, I am now studying to become a personal trainer. They've helped me obtain education in that field, and will actually be helping me with a scholarship to the Cooper's Institute to obtain my career in personal training.
What was your profession before?
I worked at Macy's as a customer service manager, and before that I was in construction about 7 years, and before that I was cutting trees for about 5 years.
And without Sam, where do you think you'd be?
I would probably still be homeless, living under a bridge or something. I don't know. That's hard. That's really hard to say. I definitely wouldn't be pursuing the career field that I am now. I would probably be working at a day labor or under the table somewhere. But now this has really focused my attention and actually changed my career 360 degrees for the better, actually.
How about other people? Has it helped others that you know of?
It's helped quite a few people that I know of. It's all about wanting to change yourself and making the right choices, as with anything in life. But that little helping hand that they give is sometimes the little extra that you need to get you over the top, to really make it, to really change and transform.
Yeah, I know you're here to tell legislators today about the ID bill, but if you could tell them something about the budget cuts and whether or not they should do it, or should they explore their options, use a rainy day fund. Is there something you'd like to share with legislators on the cuts?
Well, I would love for them to always look at other opportunities, other avenues, and don't go with the first thing on the plate like most do. If they could just stop and had the time to take a look at the whole picture in a broad perspective, as opposed to just a narrow-minded little view.
What does looking at the whole picture mean to you? What are they missing? What are they not seeing?
Well, I don't think they're exploring all the avenues. I don't think they're looking at everything they possibly could look at when they're cutting the budget. They're looking at a quick fix, not a long term. So that's my personal opinion.
I know specifically they've eliminated the $20 million that was in the budget for direct service providers. So the House has zero money for it. There's this placeholder in the Senate for $100,000. That's only for an indirect service provider. So how it will impact is all of the cities around the state will lose their funding for direct service providing for homeless. I know that if you look back at the last cycle, this particular program, it's called the Homeless Housing Services Program. I gave Katie a fact sheet on it. Actually has a positive fiscal note. So it's just an ounce of prevention is 10 pounds of savings.
So that 20 million to zero. What does that do to Sam?
It mostly affects our shelter, which is where we actually manage all of the residential buildings in the shelter. We occupy 45% of the whole campus. Now, the campus is actually not just us. There's multiple partners. The food bank provides food, St. Vincent de Paul, Center for Healthcare Services. We have CentraMed. We have San Antonio Christian Dental. So there's everybody kind of coming together under one roof to help the homeless. So it's not just directly to Sam. It's really sort of to all of our partners. I know the $20 million directly would be just for shelter, would be just for residential programs. But I know that some of our other partners are taking different hits. Center for Healthcare Services is taking a hit on the mental health end. So then we'll see more homeless in the shelter. We'll have less money to help them. We'll just have to look somewhere else for it.
Tell us what does that do to San Antonio? I mean, you hear the cuts on different levels. It's like they're slicing off the fat. They trimming the fat supposedly, but it's a pound of flesh, and they're pulling it from just all over the place.
They're pulling it from everywhere.
What does that do? Give us like a day to day. Like, what does that mean to people, real people?
Well, for one, they're taking a cut. You're going to have to take a cut too, and whether you like it or not, it's going to come in one form or the other. Whether it be jobs, whether it be housing, whether it be surviving, and with the homeless, that's a big chunk. That's a real big chunk. So unless we can tighten our homeless belt any more than what it already is, I don't see very many people surviving anymore.
There was actually a 16% increase in family homelessness in Texas. When they looked at 2008-2009 data, they don't have the data for the last year yet. That's due to unemployment and foreclosures. So you're seeing an economic recession hit at the same time which is why Texas is in a hole. Because we're a consumption state. So if we're not, collecting sales tax on tourists staying at our hotels, then our income comes down. But on the homeless part, we've actually seen an increase as far as families.
Is that what you've seen? Have you seen more families?
I've seen a lot more families coming into the homeless shelters, yes.
Over what period of time?
Well, for me, it's only been about 10 months that I've actually been homeless. But within that 10 months, an increase.
And they bring the children?
Yes.
look
Yeah,
into the shelter.
basically we have 3 residential buildings in San Antonio. One of them's dedicated to men, one of them's dedicated to women, one of them's dedicated to families. We've had to move one floor of the women's for families because the families are full. So the family building is full. We still have room in the men's, we still have room in the women's, but we had to move some of the women into families. And depending on the cycle, it takes so many weeks. There's a waiting list for families. We can't move families into the male dorm.
There's a waiting list for the men's dorm now too. So
What is the waiting list now?
it's up to 2 weeks.
Okay. Everyone's listening, everyone's watching, the world's watching. What do you want to tell them?
Chin up and make the right choices. And I don't know. That's about all I can say.
What about you? Hopeful?
Always
Prospects?
hopeful. Always be hopeful. Always look at the bright side. Never say the cup is half empty. It's always half full.
All right. I think we're good.